Well, obviously, there's a lot of trauma going on in the world today. We have episodes almost every day. Of course, the recent hurricanes in the Caribbean, as well as the Gulf of Mexico hitting Texas and Georgia and Louisiana and, of course, Florida. And then all of the terror experiences that we're having today is creating a lot of trauma, whether you're directly involved or not. Some people are far more sensitive to these events, and it creates their own trauma. That's not to mention just the everyday experiences people are having of rejection and abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. All of these things are traumatizing. The difference between having a traumatic experience and being traumatized is that when we become traumatized, we get stuck in the trauma. And we start interpreting life through that lens, through that particular trauma. So instead of moving on, we're stuck. We're stuck emotionally, we're stuck mentally, we're stuck in the in that process. And the way you know that is that you're in the fight or flight mode. Flight is very common to everybody, but there's a third aspect of that. We either go into the fight mode, the flight mode, or the freeze mode. So freezing up, unable to speak, unable to move. The extreme of that is people literally curling up in a ball on the floor. And that's a primitive instinct. It's an animal instinct that we have of trying to make ourselves as small a target as possible to avoid the damage that's going to be done to us. And our brain doesn't really know the difference between the past and the present. And our emotions are always in the present. So when we have unhealed trauma, it literally changes our brain, and we start experiencing everything through that traumatic experience. And we're stuck there. And one of the things that we know from neuroscience is that when we're traumatized, then our brain shuts down the ability for us to even imagine something different. So our imagination shuts down, the ability to move forward shuts down. And some people think this is a result of a lack of willpower, a lack of good character, a lack of desire to want to be different. And none of those things are true. This isn't about having more willpower. This isn't about having better character. This is not about having more faith or the lack of faith. The brain literally changes, and we have to have a new experience. Now, in Life Impact, we don't necessarily specialize in trauma coaching, but we train our coaches to deal with traumatized people because we're going to have them, we're going to experience them. And if we don't know what to look for, we might be trying to bring about a result that a client is not capable of doing without going through some healing and some change from their traumatic experience. Yeah. Well, people that are going through trauma generally don't have the self-awareness to know that they're interpreting their experience through the traumatized event. This requires some real self-awareness and evaluation. For example, if you keep having the same problem over and over and over again, that might be the result of trauma. The same relationship issues over and over and over again. Or you can't see something differently, the possibility of something different, then that's a good indication that you might be experiencing what we call post-traumatic stress syndromes, PTSS or PTSD. One of the things that traumatized people are stuck on is what has been done to them rather than what is going on in the present. They're unable to say, that was then, this is now, because the then becomes the now. So one of the things that we try to help coach people with is separating what was from what is. How to move forward from a traumatized state. Generally, it takes some help. It's not something that people can do on their own. There's all kinds of programs out there to help people. Some of them are very elaborate. Some of them are pretty simple. There's all kinds of things being done, particularly for people in the military that are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress syndrome. What we do in Life Impact is try to help people to see where they are in relationship to what has happened to them in the past and what is happening to them in the present. That starts the beginning of the process. Then we try to have resources for people that are beyond our scope of competency to refer them to some of the other places that might be more helpful to them. Now, unfortunately, many people cannot afford those kind of treatment programs, and so we try to help those that we can help by helping them get in touch with the emotional impact that they're having, what they're experiencing in their body, what they're experiencing in their emotions. Generally, there's a body sensation that comes with it, whether it's in the gut, whether it's in the respiratory system, whether it's in the nervous system. People say, I feel anxious, or I feel like I got a frog in my throat, or I got a pain somewhere. And what happens many times with people that are suffering from trauma, they have a experience in their body, or they have an experience in their emotions that is from the past, so they start looking for a reason for it in the present. In other words, I have this suspicion, so I've got to find something to be suspicious about. I have this fear, so I have to find something to be fearful about. I have this anxiety, so I have to find something to be anxious about. So the emotion might be from the past where you're stuck, but you're trying to make it relevant in the present. And that's where people often accuse a partner of being unfaithful when there's no real evidence of that, but we're looking for evidence of it. Or I feel anxious, so I know something bad's about to happen, so we create a self-fulfilling prophecy of making something bad happen. So it becomes very important that we become aware of where we're stuck so that we can get healing from that, and then that we can move forward.